Hey, one of my listeners in Tampa, a single woman in her mid 40s working with a financial advisor who did not do tax planning. He rebalanced her portfolio, didn't tell her in advance, and that created an unexpected capital gains tax bill of more than $10,000. After hearing me talk about Steve Cordasco and Mercer Advisors, she made the call, same call I've made, which is to 855-558-3500. The team was able to locate other losses and help her offset that big tax bill now. Like me, she's a client. Steve Cordasco, the team, they're terrific. Cordasco Financial Network, a trade name owned by Mercer Global Advisors. They're an SEC registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Andrew Garrett Inc., which is not affiliated with Cordasco Financial Network or Mercer Advisors. Time now for the headlines from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. Something a little different today. A good news story, if you'll permit me. I want to tell you about my friend Charlie. And those of you who've been listening to me for a period of years, my God, time flies. I couldn't believe when I went back to the records to figure out, when did this happen? It was June of 2018. My wife, Lavinia, is on the board in Philadelphia of a not-for-profit called the Children's Crisis Treatment Center, CCTC. And CCTC, as I explained at the time, helps kids in really dire straits. Imagine wherever you are, but especially in Philadelphia, if you're reading the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I say wherever you are because I hope there's a CCTC all over the country. When you read the worst of the worst that can happen to humankind, and there are surviving children, and you wonder, well, what happened to the kids? In Philadelphia, in all likelihood, CCTC has stepped in to protect children. So when she joined the board of CCTC, I wanted to be supportive. I had just published a new book, which was Clowns to the Left of Me, Jokers to the Right, American Life in Columns. And I came up with an idea. The idea was that I would auction off a personal appearance at someone's book club. Do you remember this? That I would go anywhere in the country to the highest bidder and appear at their book club where we would discuss my most recent manuscript. It was all orchestrated through Charity Buzz, which is this online auction house. And I'll tell you something funny about this, and I think TC will back me up on it. Charity Buzz was reluctant to take me on, not sure of whether there would be any demand. And I was nervous as to whether there would be any bidding whatsoever for this idea that I'm coming to your book club. Well, what I remember well, because it played itself out live here on POTUS on radio, is that in the final minutes, there was feverish bidding, culminating in two bidders, each willing to pay $25,000. 25 grand for me to come to their house. And remember the deal, I was going to fly at my expense, my travel costs. I'll show up at your house and meet your book club. So one of those $25,000 bids was from Lydia in Dallas, Texas. Lydia turned out to be Lydia, wife of Bill. And I did indeed go to their home in Dallas. TC was there for a fabulous event. My recollection is that there was paella cooked over an open flame in the backyard. I kid you not. She had these decorative clowns and jokers inside the house. The mayor of Dallas was there. I mean, it was extraordinary. And Lydia and Bill turned out to be just wonderful people and a really nice family. I mean, the sort that I was very quick to add to the Christmas card list. Okay, they make the cut. The other high bidder 4 years ago was a fellow named Charlie from Long Island, New York. You'll remember this maybe. Charlie doesn't have a book club. Charlie simply wanted to write a check for the kids. He said that he was motivated to help CCTC because of what I had explained on air. He also said when he wrote his $25,000 check, which meant we raised 50 grand, he said, I hope we can someday break bread, get together. And there were some misfires, some dates that were planned, but they didn't work. He's out on Long Island. Are we going to meet in Manhattan? When can we make this work? I was going to do a speaking engagement. We were going to meet in Garden City. Life got in the way. And then, of course, came COVID. But through an intermediary, we've stayed in touch all this time. And despite the fact that the months and the years passed, last night, finally, I had dinner with Charlie and two of his friends, Mike and Rob, who, unsurprisingly, how did they all meet? This threesome? They were working together to preserve a large piece of land on Long Island against development. So high atop Hudson Yards in Midtown Manhattan last night, I had dinner with Charlie. What a guy. Charlie Reichert of Fort Salonga, Long Island, 87 years old, a spry 87 years old. There are a lot of things I could tell you about Charlie, but I know what Charlie would want me to first tell you about Charlie, and that is that he is the devoted husband of Helen, to whom he's been married for 66 years. And with a voice chock full of emotion, he explained to me how he begins every day by visiting her in an assisted living facility. Charlie did well by owning 5 grocery stores on Long Island. IGAs, not enormous. He explained the whole business to me last night. Not enormous box, big grocery stores like the giants, no pun intended, but rather small grocery stores, each of which has roots in the local community where they're located. Employ local folks, give local kids a job. And having done well because of the grocery business, now he has spent many years doing good. He supports local police. He supports the local hospital. I mean, in a very significant way. A local planetarium, parks. He and Helen have done this through a family foundation. They've got 2 children. I want to get this right. 2 children, 4 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren. And mostly what I want to tell you is that Charlie worries about kids. He worries about his kids and his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. He worries about my kids, and he worries about your kids. And what a privilege it was for me to have dinner with Charlie Reichert last night. The world needs more Charlies. That's what I wanted to tell you. Take a look at a picture of Charlie and me. Yes, Charlie and me on my Facebook page and in my Instagram account. And I think you'll get a real kick out of it. Yesterday, heavy voting. Wow, heavy voting at Smerconish.com on this question. I almost didn't uncork it yesterday, but I did. 14,529 votes were cast. Should President Biden forgive any amount of student debt? The no votes, 61.23%. No, do not forgive. There's a looming deadline of August 31. Not since March of 2020 have those who are on the hook for student loans been obligated to make those payments. And the president has said that he would like to initiate some level of forgiveness. And the question is, okay, how much and by what terms? So CNN is reporting today, and of course the link is posted at Smerconish.com, that the administration is now leaning toward canceling $10,000 in student loan debt for borrowers who make less than $125,000. White House officials have been weighing and leaning toward the cancellation up to $10,000 in student loan debt. According to multiple sources, the plan is designed to offer the forgiveness to individuals who earn less than $125,000 a year. There is the possibility that they will look at other factors. I don't know how they're going to administer that. I think it's easier said than done. You know, still mindful of the conversation that we had last week about the fraud that was perpetrated against the government for PPP loans. I mean, that's really the lurking story. I've got to circle back to that. but the government was totally inept in keeping track of to whom they'd given money and whether that money was to be forgiven. And I can see a repeat of that when it comes, just given the sheer magnitude of how many owe student loan debt, trying to track, well, what are the earnings, and therefore are you eligible for the 10 grand or not? And of course, you also get into the issue here of the taxpayers now shouldering the burden for an obligation that wasn't met by a citizen. And you've got people who say, well, what about me? I paid back my student loan. So I'm not surprised, pardon me, I'm not surprised that 60% of you said, no, don't entertain forgiveness. All right, here's another one. It's going to be really interesting. Today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Dr. Anthony Fauci's legacy. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Very simple. When all is said and done with regard to the nation's preeminent infectious disease expert, are you favorably or unfavorably disposed? A half century of public service is what he has to his name. 81 years old. He served, I think, 7 American presidents, came to the National Institutes of Health as a 27-year-old doctor who had just finished medical residency. On the upside, it's the fact that he did serve all those presidents. You know that he received, by virtue of George W. Bush, I wanted to get it straight, W or Herbert Walker, W, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the recognition for his having developed a global program to develop HIV and AIDS, known as PEPFAR. On the downside, you've got Republican members of the House already saying, hey, this is great that he's about to retire, because now we will have more time. Now we have more time for Dr. Fauci to come in and talk to us about the Wuhan, leak of the virus. On the downside as well, I guess his having initially said that Americans didn't need to wear a mask and later acknowledging it was because he was fearful that there'd be a run on masks and we just didn't have enough. For me, it's thumbs up. I will tell you, I'm a thumbs up to Fauci. I think that he acted believing that he was in our best interest, even in those instances when he made a mistake. Science is inexact insofar as you're constantly getting new information, and I understand how the response to the epidemic had to change based on the latest thinking. Basically, I don't think him to be corrupt. I think him to be a decent guy. And so I'm favorably disposed toward his legacy. Was everything perfect on his watch? No, it certainly was not. Were we overly concerned with the sort of the physical aspects of COVID and not the emotional and mental health, especially when it came to our kids? Yeah, I think that's a big part of the story. But go vote at Smerconish.com on how you regard Dr. Fauci now that you know in December he is finally retiring. There are a whole host of Trump-related stories that are in the news today. I mean, it's just unavoidable how dominant he continues to be in the news cycle. But for me, the most significant of them is the New York Times coverage, which broke last night. Headline: Trump had more than 300 classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. The initial batch of documents retrieved by the National Archives from former President Trump in January, so this is in January, contained more than 150 marked as classified, a number that ignited intense concern at the Justice Department and helped trigger the criminal investigation. In total, the government has recovered more than 300 documents with classified markings from Trump since he left office, according to people with information. That first batch was returned in January, and another set provided by Trump's aides to the Justice Department in June, and the material that was seized by the FBI in the search this month. So that's the totality. 300 documents with classified markings, but the specific nature of them, we still don't know. I thought that Glenn Thrush was an excellent guest here yesterday from the New York Times in the second hour of the program. He was part of a 3 or 4 person byline, best reporting that I've seen so far, just painting a picture of what life was like behind closed doors in the final days of the Trump administration. It was a blank show, chaotic, haphazard. He had documents in the residence. He had documents in the private dining room, hadn't undertaken any measures to pack and get out of there and adhere to the rules. So, but did Glenn have an answer as to, well, why did he hold the stuff? No more so than we've already been discussing. Go and listen to that on the SXM app, or maybe we'll even release it as today's daily podcast. You know that one element of every day's program gets released as my daily podcast. So there are 3 podcasts you need to be focused on. My daily podcast, which comes from this program, the book club podcast, where we release 3 of them a week, both from the archives and contemporary reading. I am right now finishing Patrick Leahy's memoir. He's going to be a guest of mine on CNN on Saturday, and he'll be here on POTUS next week. And it's a great, I'm really enjoying the book, really enjoying the book. So constantly releasing those elements. And then TC, of course, on Thursdays, TC After Dark drops. I gave her a tip yesterday. I wonder if she's going to follow up on it, because she likes to be a foodie, you know? And the tip that I gave her is that I read this analysis of the best airline food. I don't mean onboard planes. I should say airport, the best airport food in the country. And yeah, some places are now all of a sudden, people fly out of their way to go to O'Hare just because of a Mexican joint that's there. Anyway, I'm way the hell off message where I want to be. But the point is, podcasts, 3 of them. TC, 2 for me. NPR, a good analysis today as to where is control of the Senate going to come down to. And I bring this up for my own credibility, because I've been saying it for 6 months, and I want you to know others say it as well. What are the key races? Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. Pennsylvania, number 1. And Larry Sabato was a guest of mine on CNN on Saturday. Sabato from UVA, Sabato's crystal ball. And I said to him, hey, if you really did have a crystal ball and you could look at the result of one election as a tell of what's coming in the midterms, what would that election be? And he said it would be Nevada. Democrat Catherine Cortez Masto, the first Latina elected senator, and Republican Adam Laxalt. Significant. I mean, why is Nevada so important? Because you've got 2 strong candidates, and you've got a very diverse state. A lot of Latino, a lot of Asian, obviously a lot of white voters in Nevada. So it's the mix that allows you, it's not Kansas and it's not New Hampshire. It's not a monolithic vote. And that's why a lot of eyes are on Nevada in that race. Laxalt, by the way, I wondered, what's the relation to Paul Laxalt? That was his grandfather. Paul Laxalt, the senator, the governor, the close friend of Ronald Reagan. I mean, they were the closest of friends in Washington. And something else on the Senate realm, if I may, and that is announced yesterday, is the fact that Donald Trump is coming to Pennsylvania for Mastriano and Oz Labor Day weekend, which is not this coming weekend, but the following weekend, September 3rd, Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Trump will appear at the Mohegan Sun Arena for one of his rallies. So there they will be, Mastriano and Oz and Trump all on the same stage. One final note, I've had my eye on this in California, 3,000 miles away. I wasn't sure what Gavin Newsom was going to do with this bill that he had to make a decision on to set up drug overdose prevention programs. Well, in the end, he vetoed it. From the LA Times today, Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed a controversial bill that would have allowed supervised injection site pilot programs in LA, in San Francisco, and in Oakland in efforts to prevent drug overdose deaths and connect people to treatment for addiction. Newsom reiterated that he's committed to harm reduction strategies, but wasn't prepared to go along with this bill. If you have time and you're on Smerconish.com today, take a look at the Gary Busey stories. Holy crap. The guy came just outside of Philadelphia. He was in South Jersey. And he was there at some kind of a convention for monster, horror films. And the allegations are that he was groping some of the attendees at this confab. It sounds to me like a Comic-Con thing, but it wasn't. So he's 78 years old. He allegedly had inappropriate sexual contact with at least 3 victims during a photo shoot. Okay, so that's one story. That's the Philadelphia Inquirer. But at Smerconish.com today, you can also see the exclusive from the Daily Mail. Actor Gary Busey was caught in shocking photos with his pants down in the middle of the day at a public California park as he appeared to perform a lewd act and then lit up a cigar and looked out at the ocean for 30 minutes. And by the way, this was a day after being charged with groping 3 women in a New Jersey horror flick convention. So that's how he allegedly, you can look at the pictures yourself, took in the news. One day he gets charged. The next day he's in flagrante, allegedly, in a California park in Malibu, doing something, and then smokes a cigar and looks out at the ocean. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what you get at Smerconish.com, the newsletter. By the way, for those of you watching YouTube, my presentation of today's headlines, you got a special treat of coming attractions. Exemplar, not the correct sizing, but coming attractions. Have a wonderful day. Vote at Smerconish.com, the newsletter on today's survey question, which asks about Dr. Anthony Fauci. Thumbs up or thumbs down on his legacy.